On August 27, 2024, the Fort Worth Astronomical Society Astrophotography Special Interest Group had the pleasure of having a presentation from Frank Marek of Seti Astro. Here is Frank's presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, and welcome to the August 27, 2024 Astrophotography Special Interest Group meeting for the Fort Worth Astronomical Society, one of the largest astronomy groups in the country, with approximately 200 members and a very active astrophotography group. And we have a special speaker for today. Our special speaker is the founder of Seti Astro, Frank Marek, and he has developed a number of post-processing scripts that can be used with PixInsight, which is a program many of us love to hate and struggle with and have frustrations with. But what Frank has done is come up with some scripts to make that job easy. I liken it to the ASI Air for post-processing, but it's better for many different reasons. ASI Air has, got its own limitations. It's got its own quirks and problems, and you have to pay for it. This is a phenomenal group of scripts that Frank has developed. They're free. You can download them, and they are really excellent. And I think they are going to, if they don't replace, if they haven't already replaced some of the more outdated processes yet, I think they will very soon. And with that introduction, Frank, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah. Hey everyone, this is my first kind of live back and forth with a group of fellow astrophotographers out there. I've done a couple like YouTube things, but not to a bigger group. So bear with me as I work through stuff. I didn't know how exactly you wanted me to go through the information. I could just kind of run through some stuff I've prepared, and then if you guys have questions, just jump in, I would think.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Why don't you just go ahead and actually, if you don't mind, Frank, tell us a little bit about how you got down this path of writing these scripts, and then go ahead and tell us what you have.
Okay, yeah. So I guess I'll start a little bit about me. I was a nuclear electrician in the United States Navy on submarines, so not a lot of stargazing time under the water. But after getting out in 2010, I really started my kind of astrophotography hobby. Started with just a small like Celestron 50 millimeter, just like a toy telescope with a point and shoot on it, and just kind of went from there. So kind of been in the hobby for 14 years, and been in PixInsight for a number of years. And about a year ago, I started a YouTube channel, really just kind of to present my images to, more people than my family that probably is getting bored of my images. And it I don't know how it happened. It slowly turned into like a tutorial kind of walkthrough YouTube channel. And then I had some requests to stretch stars. Like I had this one person there just having some problems, wondering how I was doing my stars. And I thought, man, this would be a great way to dip my toe into seeing if I could script. I'm not in software development. I know a little Visual Basic from Excel, right? So it was a totally new thing for me, and it kind of took off from there. All right. Yeah, let me see if I could share.
It certainly has taken off. I mean, you've got a very large YouTube following. And do you have any numbers on how many people who have actually downloaded your scripts, or is that something that you can count?
No. So once I have it on the repository, right, anybody with the link, it just pulls down. So I don't have visibility to that. I will say though, my YouTube channel, I'm now over 3,100 subscribers, and I never thought it'd get that big. So that's pretty exciting. And I could Google Seti Astro and it comes up with a bunch of stuff now. So
Yeah.
Well,
at least that's cool.
I've used your blemish master a bunch. I love it. So I've
Oh,
played
good.
around with some of the others, and I'm looking forward to hear you talk more about them because I wasn't sure how to use some of them. So, but your
Oh,
blemish blaster is great.
yeah. I hope that's one of the scripts that we could retire out of PixInsight. I don't think anybody likes clone stamp, right? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
we can.
perfect.
We see Seti Astro.
So I kind of told you how I wanted to go down the scripting route, and I don't know how to code, so I turned to Chat GPT, and I know a lot of people were using it as like a gimmick, like, hey, write my little video episode, or give me the steps to process something, right? And they all used it as a gimmick. I asked it, hey, are you familiar with PixInsight? Do you know how to write code in PixInsight? And kind of just went down this rabbit hole and had quite a lengthy conversation. You can see here.
Wow.
With ChatGPT, just starting to get a script working. And then along with that, I found a very useful forum post on the PixInsight forum on introduction to scripting. And it's an amazing video. If you want to get into scripting, I highly recommend this. It walks you kind of baby steps through how JavaScript works in PixInsight. And it really allowed me to talk more intelligently to an AI to actually have we start to create, my ideas, get them into PixInsight. And that's kind of where I started again. So, I had to start somewhere. And then the other thing with Stretch and Stars, I knew that when I was doing it, I was just like open histogram transformation on the stars only image, slide the midtones down to about a quarter, and then just hit apply a couple times until the stars looked right. And I was like, that's what I want my script to do. That's how I want to start this whole path. And so I actually dug in the XISF specification, and I know you're all familiar with it as the extension of our files in PixInsight, right? But it's a full image spec, just like any ISO or IEEE specification would be, right? It is fully laid out, properties, cans and can't do's inside it, like all of it. But kind of way deep down in here, there's a section called right here, display function. And they define certain things here, midtones transform, clipping function, expansion function, like all these different things. But what I caught on to right away is this midtones transfer function is the histogram transformation. Like when you pull that slider around, it's using this equation in order to lighten or darken your actual image. And I'm a math nerd. I got a pi earring. My coffee cup is covered in equations. I was like, I could really make this thing rigorous, right? So I took this midtones equation, and I knew I was pulling the slider down to a quarter. So I just plugged a quarter into the equation and simplified it. That got me like this 3 times the target over 2 times the target plus 1. And I wanted to see how like the equation would respond if I just did it again and again and again. So then if you put all that back into the equation, you get this 9 times the target over 8 times plus 1. Putting it back in, it's now 27 times. If you notice, these are all powers of 3, 3, 9, 27. And then on the bottom, they're powers of 3 minus 1, 2, 8, 26. So it allowed me to come up with this equation in blue, which does exactly what the histogram transformation function would do if you're applying 0.25 on it over and over and over again, but in a much more analytic fashion. Right now, I could do 2.5 times or 3.2 times versus just those integer multiples of using it. So that's what I based my stretch on for star stretch. I also put a color boost in there. Color boost wasn't scientific or anything. I just put a curves in it that made my stars look pretty, and seemed to work. So that's what I went with for star stretch, and that was my first script to go along with star stretch. I also always was shooting with I have a 120 ST Orion Acro refractor that I do a lot of imaging with, and you all know Acros have some pretty bad chromatic aberration. So my RGB stars were terrible. Even shooting mono with dedicated filters, the blues were always just super bloated. I got to the point where I was shooting narrowband for the stars and just throwing away the RGB stars. And I wanted a nice script to do how I was doing my conversion to RGB stars. So I also kind of came up with this one around the same time. It's probably the same pixel math you've used if you've ever had to take hydrogen and oxygen stars and make RGB stars out of it. But now it's scriptable, and there's some other niceties with having it in an interface like that. So I just wanted to kind of demonstrate it on. I have some narrowband stars here. We look at star stretch first. Well, now you know what the slider does. The stretch amount of 5, that's in that equation, that's now 3 to the 5th times the target over, that's really where that comes from. And, over time, I've been able to add things like a preview. All that stuff just took iterations of working with the community that I've kind of developed now. I'm very back and forth with everybody. I'm very responsive to emails and comments and stuff like that, trying to make these as useful to everybody as possible, right? And so yeah, this is all it does. It just stretches your stars. And I think we've all tried to do an STF on stars accidentally, and it always blows up on you. So that's not a good method. And then for the narrowband to RGB stars, again, if you have hydrogen and oxygen, you could just use it on those two. If you also have sulfur, you can include your sulfur stars. And the nice thing is you could apply the star stretch right away. So it combines it all, gives you a nice stretch. If you do have a one-shot color camera with a dual band filter, I know those are getting increasingly popular. You could just put the stars only image in there, and it'll do the extraction for you and combine them all and give you a nice star. So you don't even got to mess with extracting your reds and greens and all that from your dual band filter here. But again, we just execute, and when it's done, you get nice stars. I mean, that was the whole point of the script. I use it all the time for my narrowband stuff now. I would recommend giving it a go. And if your stars are looking great, don't waste time with RGB. You guys said you're trying to do the squid. You need every hour of O3 time as you can get. You don't want any RGB if you don't have to, right? So those are kind of my first 2 scripts, getting out there and kind of the math behind them. The next thing, and I'll try not to be too scattered with this, is okay, yeah, let's go back to the documentation and see what more PixInsight's actually defining in here. There's this clipping function. They kind of go through some examples, and then they get down to this MAD situation here, where it's a statistical measure. It's kind of like standard deviation, and they actually have it like 1.48 times all this stuff to get their normalized MAD. And what that's supposed to do, and it says it right here, it's supposed to normalize it to standard deviation of a normal distribution. There's a problem with that, and I wholeheartedly disagree in PixInsight using MAD in this situation. photons entering our telescope are not a normal distribution. They're a Poisson distribution. It's a different statistical beast. So when you continue down in here, they define their clipping point based on MAD. So when you run screen transfer function, STF, this is the equation it's actually using, this one right here. And its clipping point is based on MAD. So we've all experienced it. You have a normal noisy image. STF works just fine. It doesn't stretch it weird, doesn't do anything weird. I actually have statistics pulled up here to really illustrate what's going on. And I'll just zoom in. So in this case, with normal noisy data, MAD is this 4611 and standard deviation is 7916. That's about right? 8,000 is about 1.5 times 5,000. It kind of checks out for what they were saying in the documentation. But when we go ahead and run something like Noise Exterminator, now if we look at the statistics, you'll see that MAD just fell out the floor and standard deviation is still of a normal size. So now MAD is about an order of magnitude smaller, which means its stretch is an order of magnitude harder. That's, it's clipping it that much closer to the median. And that's the reason why STF goes bonkers when you run it on a noise-free image, because the MAD is so small. And it actually gets worse if where is it? Here it is. Here's the full color of, I was just showing the green channel before, but here's the full color one. If you're taking the noise out of the full color image here, MAD now is almost 2 orders of magnitude smaller than standard deviation. So in the core of it, that's why STF always just goes crazy when you run it on a noise-free image. But it's a good stretch, right? There's nothing wrong with it. They're just stretching it way too hard. Well, I have a good stretch too from my star stretch, right? It's the same thing. It's the same math that they're using in screen transfer function. It's just kind of presented differently here. They're just clipping it way too much. So what I decided to do is use standard deviation for my black point determination versus MAD, since it more closely represents the statistics that are actually in our images. And it also allows us to do one other really nice thing, is when you select your target median, you're actually putting in what that M is in this equation. The T here would represent the images median, like what the median's actually sitting at. So we know what the images median is. We know what you selected, what we want to stretch it to. It's an old high school problem, solve for X. Unfortunately, in this case, X is in the exponent in both the numerator and denominator. And we get this beautiful logarithmic equation here. But the point is, it can be analytically solved, right? It is an actual solution. So now between finding the black point, we could analytically solve for where we want the median. That should be enough for our stretch now. And I think this is the script where my I guess my name started getting out there a little bit more. Like I felt like more people started knowing my scripts with statistical stretch. So we'll just walk through those steps. We got to find a black point. We got to stretch it. And then the third thing it does is normalize if you so choose, which just means it'll look at the brightest pixel value. If it's less than 1, it'll stretch it up to 1. So it completely fills out the range from 0 to 1 if you choose to have it. I have a GHS open just because it has a beautiful histogram. But we can go ahead and we'll just run the steps. So the first step it did was define the black point. So you'll see the whole histogram here shift to the left. So that's the first thing it did. And then the next is actually perform the stretch. So that's where we'll go ahead and take its current median, which is way low. It's it's 74.84, and it's gonna go stretch it up to I had it at the 0.25. So now you can see the histograms all filled out now, and our median is right at 0.25000022. So, it really does a good job of nailing what you set it to in the script. And then if you so choose, it'll do that normalization. So right now, the maximum pixel is 0.998. If you run it, just stretches it that little bit up to 1. That's all normalization does. But in the end, now we have a good stretch. It didn't clip anything, which was really important when I was making this. I didn't want my script to clip your data, right? If you so choose later to shove the black point over to make your sky darker, that's a choice on you, and it wasn't me forcing it upon any of the users. And then the histogram itself really looks good for an initial stretch. Like, that's kind of what you're aiming for, right? Where the log of the histogram fills out kind of the whole thing. There's not a whole lot of big bumps or anything that you're trying to smooth out. So that was the whole point of statistical stretch. Make a good initial stretch from a linear to nonlinear state, because GHS is really clunky if you're trying to do that first initial stretch. There's some other methods, but this one is solely based on the image properties. So that way, even, I don't know, if there's any actual professionals in your group, you could use that. It's completely based on the statistics of the image. If they need to do a stretch for something in the literature, right? They're not making anything up. It's what was already in the image. So that's the guts. Now I'd want to actually kind of just walk through a more realistic example instead of using this 0.25, which is overstretching the background here. So this is, we'll just go back to a linear image here. And now all my scripts are up here, script Seti Astro, and then all of them there, and then statistical stretch. It does have a preview off to the right if you want to use it. You can make it bigger or smaller, and if you click preview refresh, it'll fill in the gray space there if you did resize it. So that's just something to know. But I do have in the instructions, like, 0.1 is a good start for distinct objects. So in this case, right, is the galaxy there. Most of the image is sky, right? Most of the image here is not signal. So we don't want to stretch all that up. So let's go ahead and set that down to the 0.1. And then I do have a curves boost here. And we'll just show you what the curves does right after this too. But let's just give it a little boost up. You could always just refresh the preview and see if it's what you like. And then we can execute. And when it's done, you'll probably see something off to the side that the final curves was applied and the STF has been disabled. I added that in there because nobody likes doing these things and then you get a whole big white image, so it will turn off your STF for you. But this is now how you would probably, start your initial stretch on an object like this, right? The background's still nice and dark. Your galaxy now has some brightness to it. The core's not all blown to heck. And now at this point, you can go ahead and apply your own artistic tweaks to the contrast, pull up GHS, right? Start working it. But what I really wanted to show too is none of my stuff's a black box. So if we go ahead and look this one up, sorry, I got a bunch of these things open. Everything's in the History Explorer that happened. So it ran this process container. You could double click it. Here's the math it did on every step. There's the finding the black point, there's the actual stretch, there's the normalization. And in the History Explorer 2, it even has the curves, right? Here's the actual curve from the curve boost it did. So there's nothing hidden in any of my scripts. So I know some other tools and stuff are kind of more black boxy, especially processes. So you can always dig into what's going on in all this. Now might be a good quick pause. I talked a bunch. If anybody has questions.
All right, I've got one on the curves boost. What I have been doing is, honestly, I'll find a stretch that I like. Maybe it's 0.2 or 0.25 at the most, something like that. I don't think I've gone much above that. But then the curves boost I played with, and then I might do 10 different iterations of it before I find something I like. And I was wondering, is there a best practice that you would recommend people use for the curve boost? For example, if it's a dark nebula or if it's a bright emission nebula or a galaxy, are there any kind of best practices for those kinds of things?
Yeah. Great question. And because you can dig into it, like I just showed, you could pull out your curves transformation and just do undo once, and that undid that curve. And the curve is defined here with all the points. Now, if you click real-time preview, right now you could just play with it in real time, what you want to do with it. And that number in the script actually is how far up this first point is on the curve. So if you have it set to 0.2, it's moving it a fifth the way up to the top. Just to kind of keep it in your mind's eye what that curve means. But yeah, once you do it, you could just undo it quick and pull it up out of the history, and at that point you can use the real-time preview, right? So that'll probably be a little easier than just trying multiple iterations in the script, since unfortunately scripts can't utilize the real-time preview, which is just a limitation of PixInsight.
Anybody else have any questions so far? I really love your star stretch, by the way. That is one of my favorites, and I've used it a lot since I discovered it about 3 months ago.
Yeah, it just sometimes the easy things just are. It's nice when it's quick and just dropping it. We won't cover that yet. The other one that I think is fairly popular, if you want to say that, but is my automatic DBE or ADBE. And
very much so.
To really talk about that, I got to talk about Find Background first. So Find Background's a script. It was actually a collaboration effort with another individual, but all it does is supposed to find your background for you to use in like background neutralization or SPCC. All those scripts require a background preview area to do a correct calibration. So what it does is, let's pretend this image here is your image. The high points are brighter parts of your image, and the low points are dimmer portions of your image. What Find Background does is essentially it throws a whole bunch of balls on this image and lets them all roll downhill. And it's called gradient descent. It's used a lot, but that's what it's doing. It's just letting all these points kind of roll down into the valleys, and then that particular script uses the lowest point it finds and calls that your background. There is a method to exclude like dark nebula and stuff in that particular script, since even though yes, dark nebula would have the sky background in it, there's usually a a color cast in dark nebula. They're all kind of like that ruddy browny red. So that's really not what your background color is, but that's the idea behind find background. But we could use that then to automate DBE, and I can talk more on my opinions about other gradient correction tools, but I still feel if you spend the time with DBE, you're going to get a superior result than using Graxberg. Graxberg's great. It's quick, it's easy, but it does have a tendency to strip some smaller scale structure out of your images if you're not careful with it. And then the worst offender by far is the new gradient correction process in PixInsight. I don't think they did anybody a service putting that process out. I think they were just putting something out to compete with Graxberg quickly. That's my own personal opinion on what happened there, but yeah, I would never. I have a whole nother video if you want to watch it on my channel about why I don't use gradient correction. But so with that, I came up with auto DBE. It goes ahead and it first runs ABE, the automatic background extraction, to remove the simple gradient, and then at that point, it puts a whole bunch of points on the image and lets all those points roll downhill. So that way it necessarily avoids stars, it avoids signal areas, because it's trying to find those background points. And then from there, those are the points it uses for DBE. And with that, I'll just pull up the script now. There's some other niceties when you do it like that. So here's the simple gradient removal. It defaults to a degree 1, which is like your normal left to right kind of gradient, or up to down. A lot of the time, moon glow, things like that will be linear gradients. If your image looks like it has vignetting, or maybe the flat didn't correct it or overcorrected it, right, that'd be a degree 2. But once that simple gradient's gone, now you can go ahead and let all those points roll downhill. And more importantly, unlike gradient correction or Graxpert, there's no way to tell those tools, hey, this one area is not gradient, don't try to correct for it. So in this example, we got the dark doodad here. You said you guys were doing the dark shark gradient, right? You don't want any of these tools trying to correct for that dark area.
Right.
So in ADBE, I have a method here where you could exclude these areas from being used in it. So it won't place any points in there. So that way, it'll be excluded. So we'll just go ahead and run it. You can override other features in here. The tolerance is the same tolerance that DBE is. With the gradient descent method, it automatically calculates sample radiuses and a smoothing factor for you, but you can go ahead and override those two if you so choose. But we'll just run it. It right now it's doing the ABE on the linear gradient. Once that's gone, it'll go ahead. It has to calculate some statistics. It's going to go ahead and now run gradient descent on all those different paths. And then it uses all those points now for DBE. And here's the gradient it found. It's a nice smooth gradient. And here's the, and here's it in its corrected form.
That's just amazing. I mean, it hands down beats Graxpert, no question, and especially the new PixInsight version of whatever they're calling it. I tried it once and said, it was useless.
Yeah, it's the small scale structure that gradient correction wants to remove is ridiculous. But But anyways, what I wanted to really, and the reason why I like using this image is in the lower right corner. It may be hard to see on Zoom, but it does look like it overcorrected this area a little bit. And again, none of this is a black box. So let's go ahead and find this image in History Explorer. Here's the steps it ran, but you can go ahead and pull out DBE. Let's just do undo once. So that undid the DBE portion of it. If you open up that from the History Explorer, all the points are still here. All the parameters are still here. And if we zoom in on the corner, because it places a point in every corner, there's a star right in the corner in this case. It placed the point on the star. It rolled off the hill doing gradient descent. And the star field is so dense here, it just got stuck. So what's great is since all of them are still in here, you could delete that point or just move it off and hit the green check again. And now it's done. Now it didn't overcorrect that corner. Everything's good to go. So again, in Graxpert or gradient correction, there's no way to do those little kind of things, right? Like if Graxpert had a great correction everywhere, but just this one kind of area where it like overcorrected something, there's no way to go in there and fix that. There's no way to tell it, hey, you didn't do well there. And so that's really why I like AGBE. The vast majority of the time, it's definitely my go-to right off the bat. And then if something's not where I really want it, but again, like, okay, here's Andromeda. If you just run, like, here's gradient correction. We'll go ahead and use this tool. I gotta turn off my linked. So, using gradient correction, you could see, there's a big chunk of Andromeda brightness that it just, took right out the middle. But in ADBE, again, you can go ahead and say, hey, I know there's a huge galaxy here in the middle. Maybe I don't want it trying to place any points in there, because maybe it's going to get stuck in one of these, dust lanes in Andromeda. And now we can just go ahead and tell it to give it a go. Now it's just doing the gradient descent on all those points. All right, and here's the gradient it found. Much better looking, nice and smooth. And it didn't strip anything out of Andromeda. It didn't like overcorrect the corners or anything weird. So, it's I highly recommend anybody to really inspect the gradients that they're pulling out. Like here's Rho Ophiuchus. I had a channel member actually asked me if I could do a one-shot color tutorial. And I was like, sure, I don't have a one-shot color. If you could send me your master. And they sent me this. And I was like, oh man, I don't know how this tutorial is gonna go, right? It's just all gray and didn't look really great. But I was like, all right, I'm just gonna work through my steps. I know that there's some, dust down in here. I don't want, anything getting caught in this dust. Beyond that, I don't know what I'm really looking for a whole lot. I'm just gonna go for it and let it run. And I think this is drizzled, so this one may take just a little bit longer. It's a little bit bigger image, but it's still pretty quick. All right. And when it's done, it has a nice kind of, it almost looks linear. But then when, now you run screen transfer, and I was just like, wow, right? Like, oh, I could work with this for a tutorial. This is amazing. So that's ADB. I think I rambled on enough with that one.
If you've got an image, though, where almost the entire image has nebulosity of some nature, where it's you're I don't know, you're taking an image of the heart of the uh, the heart nebula or something, where there's nothing nebulosity, right? Do you
North America, yeah.
or North American
Yep.
nebula? How would you recommend using those little I forgot what you call them, the blocks that make sure it doesn't sample those areas?
So, based on the nature of it, you really don't have to be too worried about bright areas, right? It's going to necessarily try to avoid those. And there's some other logic in there where, it breaks up the image in quartiles and it really looks at some other areas and stuff. So you really don't have to avoid really bright nebulosity, where I would, like I did for this one here, I knew there was dark nebula in Rho Fucus. So that's where I boxed it, where it could easily just put a bunch of points down in the really dark area and maybe neglect some other areas. But all in all, with how it works, after the main gradient's gone with ABE, the DBE portion of it is it's less of a contribution than you might think. The main gradient removal part of it is actually the ABE. It really does do a decent job doing the main portion of it. But once again, for gradient correction, until we get, until PixInsight comes out with their Mars project, it's one of those things where don't trust any of the tools. Use your eyes and see what it's doing. And that's why I like, especially if you got something that's completely full of nebulosity, go, do the undo once and look in your history explorer, see where it put the points, make sure it makes sense in your own mind. And if you got to move any or delete any, go ahead and do that. The nicety of that is it already did like 95% of the work, setting DBE up for you, getting all the, the smoothness, the sizes, putting all the points on there, right? It already did all the hard work. If you got to shuffle a couple of points around, go for it,
All right. Well, this is one of my favorite tools, in addition to the stretching tools. And then, of course, you've got several others. I don't want to steal your thunder. I especially like the one where it says "What's in my image," but I'll let you take it.
Yeah, we can do that. So I'm a big nerd, and that's part of the reason why I like the hobby. Is not only do I like, looking at the image when you're done, but I've always liked the sense of exploration looking at the image, right? Like, but it was hard before. You'd kind of maybe use astrometry.net to plate solve it. So you'd have a plate solve TIFF, and then you're putting it over in like Aladdin and trying to like find image or objects in there. And then you're bouncing over to Sinbad, and you're really trying to, work with like 4 or 5 different tools. We've all used the annotate image in PixInsight, but those kind of have limited catalogs. There's not a whole lot of good methods in there. It just does the whole image all at once, and you can't really do much beyond that. So I did a script called "What's in My Image." It's probably the most complex script I got by a long shot, but it has a little mini preview. So you know where you're at in your image, and it resizes to this size. You can click and drag either of them. If you shift click, you could like define circles. But what's really great is with that defined circle, from here you could just query Sinbad directly, and it'll come back with all the stuff in that area, and you'll have a list down below. If you click any of the ones down here, it will highlight the marker in the image with green. If you click any of them up in the image, it'll go ahead and highlight the object in the box down below. And then you could double click any of it. You could double click the row down here or the marker up in the image itself, and it'll take you directly to the Sinbad website with the entry for that object. So you could immediately start digging into, objects in your image. And that's kind of like the simple search. I do have an advanced search button here. If you click that, a whole nother side panel opens up. And this is all the different things you could actually query Sinbad for. And it's a lot. I did make some buttons here to like just toggle all the stars or toggle all the galaxies, or if you toggle everything and click toggle stars and galaxies, it'll shut all that off. So now you're only looking at nebula and stuff. But like in a case like Andromeda here, if you go ahead and I don't know, let's find something quick like quasars. QSO quasar. You could click that check, click confirm selections, and in this case, we'll query the entire image, and it'll go ahead and do that. There is a wrench icon here. When you're doing big images, you're going to want to set your max downloads up a bunch, just so you make sure it pulls down everything it can. But in this case, like here's all the different quasars it found. So like here's a little quasar. That's something a lot of people like just looking for. This particular one has a nice redshift, and that's always cool. I like using this Ned Wright's cosmological calculator. It's a quick way to convert redshift to distances. So we got 1.323. We're in a flat universe. So that particular quasar is 13 billion light years away, and the light's been traveling for just shy of 9 billion years, so twice the age of the Earth, for the light to enter the scope for that particular object. And it's this kind of stuff that I just geek out over a whole bunch. And beyond that, I mean, I added a whole suite of annotation tools. You could do things like like what's the distance between these two stars? It's 2 minutes and 55 arc seconds. You can draw an arrow to that quasar. Here, draw an arrow to that quasar. You can add, I don't know, just text. There's just a bunch of different things you can annotate. You can change fonts, colors, all sorts of stuff. Where in annotate image, there was nothing to do any of that. You can go ahead and save just the cropped view, or if you uncheck it, you can save the whole image. And then the coolest feature that I added, or one of the cool features that I added recently, is this save collage of objects. So let's go ahead and Andromeda has a lot of supernova remnants. So let's click supernova remnants. Let's clear all this stuff. We'll confirm selection. We'll query Sinbad for supernova remnants. And here's all the supernova remnants in Andromeda. You can actually delete markers down in here. I got some videos on, actually multiple videos on this tool to cover everything. But once you have all your objects defined, if you click Save Collage of Objects and then the Save Annotated Image button, it'll go ahead and make a collage. So I'll just rewrite this one. I'll overwrite it. You could save them as JPEGs, PNGs, TIFFs, whatever kind of file you want to save. And then the next screen that comes up, you could save the whole annotated image right away. I'm just going to click the X. We don't need that. And let me get out of here quick. We'll just open that up. But here was the collage it just made of all the supernova remnants in Andromeda. And that this used to take a lot of manual effort to go ahead and pull out all your cool little objects like this to make a collage. And it's just another neat little tool we could bore our families with, showing them all the stuff in our images. One last cool thing I want to do with what's in my image is I recently imaged the cosmic gecko, or whatever you guys call this thing. And when I was processing it, I noticed right away like this X. And I was like, oh, that's cool. You don't see X's very often in your astronomy images, right? So I think maybe I was just even looking at hydrogen at the time, but I was like, all right, I'll open, what's in my image. Let's go down to this X thing. We'll just do it, the simple Simbad query. And I was like, okay, oh, that's really cool. Okay, so it's this emission line star. It's inside this reflection nebula. There's a Harbig Haro object. Like this is a lot of cool little stuff right here. But then I was like, I added this other new thing, query MAST. And MAST is the online archive for a bunch of these space-based telescopes. There's Swift, Hubble, JWST, Spitzer, Chandra, just a whole bunch of them. So if you query MAST now, it may take it a second to download, but sure enough, there's entries here for it, and Hubble has imaged this object. That's HST is the Hubble Space Telescope. So if you double click that, it'll pull up the MAST website for that area. And I don't know if anybody's used the browser in PixInsight. It's not that great. I normally end up copying the URL out of the browser and putting it in a real browser. But here here's the MAST website. Here's all the data. It has a little graphical thing off to the side, but you can click HST and it just filters for Hubble. And this is all the Hubble data it has on it. You can download all the fits for it. Here's all the different filters. And so that's what I did. I was like, this is so cool. And that's what this is. This is Hubble raw data of this object. And I was like, that is just so cool, right? Like this is that object. I was so excited to see that. And I mean, it's just finding these little things. You've spent all this time taking the image, processing it, getting a pretty picture. This is the cool stuff in your image, right? Like these are the things you didn't even know was in it in the first place. So yeah, that's what's in my image. There's a lot you could do with it. Yeah.
That had to have taken you a really long time to perfect. I mean, I've been playing with this, and I mean, I went down that rabbit hole for, I don't know, several hours one evening, and it was just playing with it. I mean, that had to take you weeks to create. I am imagine.
Yeah, and that's why all my scripts, if you have my repository, you'll notice that there's a lot of updates. I put out a lot of updates, and it's because maybe it's because I've never been in software development, and I'm like, I want to get my script out as fast as I can. And so they're not fully built. Essentially, when I first put this out, it didn't have any advanced searches. It only did the Simbad query. And I had to build up adding all these different things, and then like doing the Vizier search. The catalogs that it pulls down are completely different than the Simbad one, which is completely different than the MAST. So each one of those have to be like you're querying a website, right? An archive, and it returns data to you, and it's formatted a certain way, however they have it, and you have to be able to tell PixInsight how to look at that data, like what columns mean what, and everybody has their own way of doing it. But yeah, it took a bit, but it definitely, I thought I think it's one of the coolest ones. And like even just putting this celestial marker, man, that was a pain in the butt to
Mhm.
to get it to know where it is in the sky and know its rotation. That was like a whole day of just fiddling with errors. I've crashed PixInsight more than any other human, I think, ever, trying to write these scripts.
Uh, you have several others that are also excellent, and we shouldn't overlook the ones where oh, it's like the mask. I forgot what you call it.
Oh, yeah. So here we go. I call it fame.
That's
Uh,
it,
it's a
right?
little play on game. Everybody knows the Galaxy Max editor, and that's under utilities game, and everybody's used this thing, right? It's the only way to make like freehand masks, and it's I mean it's okay for drawing ellipses. Um, I always find grabbing these little points to just be a pain. And then if you've ever tried using this multi-point thing, it's rough. You're trying to like every time I try grabbing one of these points, I can never grab it, right? You just end up with a million little points. It's always ugly. So I'm sorry, PixInsight. Your stuff's good enough. You could make a lasso tool, right? Like this is where we're at. Just your users have to make this stuff up, but that's what it is. You could use the mouse wheel to kind of zoom in and out, but it's a freehand. That's what Fame is. Freehand adaptive mask editor, and you could just draw your mask and you're good. I do have a means of like drawing ellipses in there. If you still want ellipses, you can move them around. You can rotate and resize them. Same with like rectangles and stuff. And then the other thing that I thought was nice is if you hit the space bar, you can cycle through your active shapes. And if you don't like one of them, you can hit the little undo guy down here and it just deletes that shape for you if you misdrew it or whatever. Um, and then beyond that, I put in a bunch of mask types. I mean, with the game script, almost everybody just used the binary mask. It's what you did. You blurred the edges, and that was your mask. I also built in a lightness mask, a chrominance mask, and then if you just want a specific color, I put just kind of your standard red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, magenta masks in there as well. So you could actually be a lot more specific on the mask you're using versus just a binary. So you got this section here. We can make a chrominance mask out of that. We'll go ahead and make a lightness and just the binary just to kind of see all the different kinds. And this one stays open so you can make a bunch of masks. But everybody's familiar with the binary. That's just your black and white. For the lightness mask, it's almost like a grayscale of your image. So when you mask with this, it's especially good for like enhancing contrast, right? Because now if you hit curves with this kind of a mask, the bright areas are going to get brighter faster than the dimmer areas, right? So you could really help playing with that, or reducing some weird artifacts, maybe things like that. And then the chrominance mask is nice because it's just looking at color. And like you can see how it's quite different than the lightness mask. Here's the core of Andromeda off to the left, but it's black in the chrominance mask because it's white. White doesn't have any color data. So it's really just looking at those color pockets that you could maybe hit with a little more saturation in that area or whatever the case may be. And being able to use, like, I just want a red mask in this area. It kind of made my other script that I made right before Fame almost completely useless, which is my mask merge script. It does find its use still. Sometimes you do have like two masks that you want to combine in some fashion. So here I'll just demonstrate. It could take up to three masks, and there's you could take the union of them, which is just kind of add them together. And here's some circles to really let you see what's going on. So I have just three different circles. You could intersect them, and that'll just take the intersection of all three of them. Then you can do other things too, like maybe you just want to invert that one, add it to the other one, and then take the intersection. There's all sorts of different combinations, right? So that it's just all normal pixel math, but I mean, not a lot of people like pixel math or remember all the different equations to do these kind of manipulations. So this tool is there. It's not used very often, but I've definitely found times where I'm like, nope, I gotta combine these two masks, right? I only want these little bits out of this mask in this more localized area. So it is there. It's great if you need to use it, but you probably won't use it that often, if at all. And then the other one, like you had mentioned, was a blemish blaster, and what that does is, well, we've all used clone stamp, right? Clone stamp, you define some other area, it gives you a radius, and it just kind of plops whatever the target area was that you're trying to do. And it's hard to like choose an area that's like the exact right brightness. It's really, I don't know. I don't think anybody liked clone stamp anyways.
Yeah.
So what this does is when you define a circle around an object, the script will draw the 6 tangent circles to it. Then it will look at those 6 and determine which of the 3 most closely match that middle one. And then pixel by pixel, take the median of those 3 and write a new pixel in that middle one. So it kind of takes the content of those 3 closest matching points and removes the blemish with that. So it's a lot more content aware. And in this particular case, where there's like 2 darker ones, well, we don't want the darker ones replacing that. You've all seen that where you get like a dark donut when you're trying to use clone stamp. Or this one's a brighter one. You don't want the brighter one. You really want the ones that most closely match what you're trying to do there. So we'll go ahead and just open it up. We'll go down to one of these blemishes down here. I have added a freehand. If you don't want a circle, you could be a lot more refined with drawing around your blemish if you want. We'll go over satellite trails here in a second too, but you just shift click and draw a circle. I do have feather and opacity. They work just like in clone stamp, right? Like how soft the edge needs to be. And then if you turn the opacity down, it's how much will bleed through from the underlying image. But you can click execute, and it removes the blemish. And you could draw multiple at once. You don't need to do one at a time, and it'll just remove them in order that you drew them, and it removes them.
Yep.
And then here's the one from the actual PowerPoint, which is kind of a harder case. This is a blemish within stuff, right? Like there's all this nebulosity around here. This is the Pleiades, right? And if you execute here, it's gone, and you still have all this nice structure around there. It's one of those things where if you're just given this, you'd kind of be really hard pressed to tell me where the blemish was in the first place. And I think that's the goal with these kind of tools is you don't want a big thing, where it should have been. After you can right click to remove. Let's say you drew a circle wrong, you could right click them to get rid of them. but let's say you're done with all your blemish removals, and at that point, then you have to click apply to main image, and I'll kind of just pull it off to the side. If you execute it, apply to main image, then it pushes that down to the main image, because in the script, it stores everything you're doing in the script, and only when you're ready does it actually push it down to the main image. So it allows you to do these undos and stuff. And then the last thing with Blemish Blaster is it can remove satellite trails. So there is a method, or I mean, if you alt click on a satellite trail line, it'll attempt to find the whole line, and then you could remove it from there. Or if you control click, you could actually just draw a line as well. And then depending on how wide the satellite trail is, you might have to get a trial run first and then maybe undo it. But we'll just go ahead and execute it. And then it's gone. So it does the same thing as the Blemish Blaster. I mean, as the circle one, it looks above and below the line. It tries to match the best pixels it could find to replace the line with. And if you zoom way in here, you could see kind of where it existed. So it's not like, you know, if you're pixel peeping, you'll be able to tell, you know, if you're that close, but it is way better and way more efficient than any other method I've found for trying to remove a satellite trail. And like I said, if you all click on the line too, it'll attempt to find the satellite trail line for you. So it drew the line all the way on that whole line, and then you can go ahead and execute on it as well if you don't want to freehand draw a line. It's also really good for just removing linear blemishes, like if you had a cosmic ray little streak or something you wanted to try to get rid of. And look, so it's done. It removed the line. Like it's gone.
It's phenomenal.
So
we had a member who was having this exact problem, and he's a very active, produces some really phenomenal images. Chris Ashford, I don't think he's online this evening. Last I heard, he was up in Gunnison. Anyway, so he took an image and he tried everything to get rid of these, because it was like a satellite trail, and it was just, so when the stacked image, he just could not get rid of under any technique of the satellite trail. So I think he's going to do jumping jacks when he sees this. I mean, this is really going to be, it's going to replace, what do they have in Pixelheight? I think it's called Skill, Satellite Kill, something like that.
Oh, I don't even know.
I think it's S.
Yeah, I'm not even familiar with that.
It's something like that.
Yeah, I mean that. I hope it works well for them. The last thing I do want to show is, the last one I made is a signature adder. Mm-hmm. Again, this is, I guess I'll stand on my soapbox just for 1 second. PixInsight is as an organization is very careful in controlling about integrating third-party software with their software. They really don't like the idea of competing software working with PixInsight. That's why the Graxberg team wasn't able to actually integrate their tools in PixInsight. They saw them as a competitor. With that said, we all like putting our logos on our images, and they didn't provide any way of putting your logo in any of your images, forcing you to go to third-party competing software, which, again, guys, you made like SPCC and all these cool tools. Like, come on, like some of these things, I don't understand how your one hand philosophy and then okay. Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox there. Um, this allows you to finally put your logo or your signature in your image. It respects transparencies, which I know is a big pain in the butt too. I call it my AstroMark signature adder. You just need your image up, and then as soon as you select your signature image, it'll show you a preview. Again, you could zoom in and out. Shift click moves your signature around. I got, if you want to make it bigger, there's a slider here for that. It'll just go ahead and, resize that. There's a rotation slider to rotate it. You can adjust the opacity in and out. I do have some preset positions too. If you just always want to have it in the lower right with an offset of 100 pixels, you could just drop that off. So it'll always load with those presets for you. And I do have a couple different blend modes in there, but this is a limitation of JavaScript and PixInsight. I can't render the blend modes in the preview. But I do have a link there. If you click it, it goes over to my website where it shows you what the different blend modes look like on a test image to just kind of give you an idea of, if you want to try one of the different blend modes. But just click execute, and there, it put your signature in your image for you, right? You didn't have to export it as a TIFF or anything else. It's at the full native resolution here in PixInsight. And it's on your image now. So I don't know why, again, why they never just included that, but it's in there now.
Well, that's I'm sure a lot of people appreciate that, and many of us have been doing exactly what you described, exporting it to a TIFF and using a third-party software program to add some kind of signature. So I agree with you. I don't understand some of the things that PixInsight does. I still love the software. I still use it all the time, but they've just got to, I don't know, learn. I think they will learn in time that these things are needed and then incorporate them. What do you see in the future, Frank? What do you imagine will be coming in the next 6 to 9 months as far as new scripts from you?
I've been flying by the seat of my pants here a little bit with all these. I get most of, I get a lot of suggestions and stuff from the community. So like I said, I read almost every comment on all my YouTube videos. You could email me, frank@setiastro.com, like that, like the signature one, right? Like I didn't intend on making one like this, but they were like, hey, can you add this in? Yeah, I can. Yeah, I think I can. Let's do it. And maybe that also goes hand in hand with, I don't know what the limitations are supposed to be coding in here. So I'm just going for it and hoping for the best, and working with the community to kind of work through some of the kinks and stuff. So I don't know, what the next scripts and stuff are going to be. There's still some things I want to do for the current scripts out there, adding more features and stuff. I know Bill Blanchard reached out to me if I want to help him code some stuff too. So there may be some opportunity of some collaboration there coming down the road. I think most of you guys know he worked with Mike Cranfield for his scripting, but Mike is currently working with Adam Block on stuff with Adam. So Bill reached out to me, so that might be really cool stuff coming in later. And then like right now, I had a whole bunch of requests for just like basics in PixInsight. I guess a lot of people like how I present and kind of just cut through all the clutter in my tutorials. So I've been working on just some kind of back to basics things to help the very newest people with PixInsight. Like there's some people that are on the free trial right now asking me questions, and so 6 to 9 months, I don't know what I'll be doing there, but I know with having a good community out there, new ideas will come up, and it's just all a matter of working together.
Well, I got to tell you, I certainly have found your scripts to be fantastic, and that's why I joined your channel, because and I don't want to steal any thunder, but if you join Frank's channel, you also get access to his some YouTube videos that are not available to everybody, right? And it's just a couple bucks a month, and they're very useful. And you also get sort of a more of an insight on what some of these tools can do. So I think it's very valuable to have that.
Yeah, if you're a channel member, it's $3 a month, but you get access to all my master lights. So I've uploaded to Google Drive all my master lights, so you get a whole suite of them to play with. When I'm coming out with beta versions of scripts and stuff, I send them out to the channel members to let them play around with all the new stuff that we're working with. And I really use the channel members to give me feedback, and there's a lot of back and forth with that. And then if there's some up and coming stuff and I want to make a quick video to go just for the channel members, then I do that as well.
And it's well worth it. I got to tell you guys, it's like you said, $3 a month, and you get a lot of extra content and a lot of access, which for those of us who struggle with PixInsight, it's very, very valuable. All right, club members, any questions for Frank? It's getting close to 8:30. I don't want to keep him out too late. He just got back from a parent-teacher conference, I think.
Open house for my second grader.
There you go. All right.
All right.
Any other questions for Frank?
No, appreciate it. Enjoy.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Well,
I just wanted to say, if you guys want, SetiAstro.com is my website. I have, this is where I have all my, we all have fun websites where all my images and stuff are, but the PixInsight script page is there where you can, get all of them. And this is where I have links to all the videos I've done on them too. So you could really, watch all the in-depth stuff for all those. If you don't ever remember my email, frank@setiastro.com, you could always go to the contact page and just fill that out and shoot it to me. Like I said, I'm really, really active on trying to keep up with the community and stuff.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, Frank. It's our pleasure to have you join the APSIG group, and maybe 6 months or a year from now, we'll have you back, and we'll find out about all your new scripts at that point. So congratulations with all your success, Frank, and thank you so much. Thank you for joining us tonight and walking us through your scripts.
Yeah. And if you guys have any other questions or whatever later, like I said, just reach out.
All right. Thanks again. Have a wonderful night, everybody. And this will be going live on YouTube as soon as I can figure out how to get it to Christian to get it to upload. So it'll probably be going, if not today or tomorrow, it'll be over the weekend. So, but we'll get it up on our YouTube channel soon. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll say goodbye, and until next time, clear skies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Good night.